From there, I think we can transition into the main topic. And this week, I think that we wanted to highlight an interesting article back in 2018, Herwig, that you wrote that described the full security token stack. And based on the viewer stats since publishing, I see it's been a very well-received article. And I figured that today, since we haven't covered it before on the podcast today, we could take an episode to do that and explain the 4 steps. So without further ado, Herwig, would you mind digging into that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. The security token stack is something that I often use to walk issuers through how the technology works and how it powers the different components of an STO. So hopefully this will help you listeners hopefully see how security tokens can be seen from kind of a different angle or at least see them a little bit more clearly. At least to say, hopefully it's not too beginner stuff for many of you. And so, of course, jumping right into it, the security token stack consists of 4 layers, starting with the bottom layer, the blockchain layer, if you will. Every security token out there, is built on distributed ledger technology, and if it isn't, it's simply a digitized security and cannot leverage the true efficiencies of security tokens that are created by smart contracts and distributed ledger technology. Now, of course, the blockchain layer is layer 1 because it is at a core, the token itself is limited to the blockchain's functionality and the consensus mechanism. So that's why evaluating this layer can look very different between issuer types. Let's first take a look at Ethereum, which is the most popular blockchain platform for STOs today. Ethereum, noted for pioneering smart contract technology, served as a great use case for security tokens. Its tools and capabilities are arguably what launched the tokenization era, and its infrastructure has found home to many startups building in the industry. But that doesn't mean that other blockchain solutions, like as we mentioned earlier, Tezos or Stellar and others, don't also offer smart contract support and STO infrastructure. This all means that when we're evaluating security token stack, layer 1 will determine different things such as the security procedures, the custody infrastructure, the scalability approaches, to factors also like what programming language needs to be used or what consensus mechanism powers the network and could affect the underlying security token functionality. And that's why you, of course, also see private enterprise blockchain solutions such as R3's Corda or Hyperledger come into market to offer, different capabilities. And last week, Kyle noted NASDAQ for choosing R3, and now we've seen Kyle note Exoni power a lot of infrastructure for, Wall Street today. So since security tokens can exist on all types of DLT solutions, layer 1 is there to serve as identifying what is the blockchain behind it all. And from there, we can identify what is layer 2, which represents the smart contracts and token layer. The very nature of security tokens means that there are all kinds of requirements and regulations that need to be accounted for in a token. And the token is built on a blockchain and now has an operating system that it needs to follow, if you will. So most tokenization companies have gone on to name their operating systems that they've created, such as Securitize's DS protocol, which is built on Ethereum. On the other hand, there are open source protocols too, like the ERC 1404 standard or Ravencoin, which is layered on Bitcoin instead of Ethereum. Or you've seen other solutions such as Stellar, which has the STC20 protocol by Swarm. And in fact, in practice, one could custom develop their own smart contracts if they decided to do so. The problem with that is if you need to ensure that all the regulations for your security tokens are completely accounted for on top of any additional security concerns that could lead to issues with the functionality of the security token. And so that's why technology companies have developed tokenization solutions for others to use. And these tokenization companies represent layer 3, or sometimes what I like to look at as sort of an interface layer. At the end of the day, for most security token issuers, they don't really care about layer 1 or 2. It's like needing to know how the hardware behind a phone works in order to make a call. We innately just expect it to work, so most of us just buy an Apple or an Android phone, and most people definitely do not ordinarily go around building their own phones and phone networks. So the Apples and Samsungs of the world exist for issuers to leverage what they've built, and just like with phones, all the tokenization platforms differ themselves. They differ by which blockchains they support, what smart contracts they use, and what features they can enable. Not to mention, they vary by price and experience, just like how we do with our phones. And other factors differentiate them too, such as geography and which jurisdictions they support, or the type of asset class that they focus on, or maybe even the type of instruments or financial structures. Layer 3 is creating an interface for issuers to launch security tokens on, and in this case, it's platforms like Securitize or Polymath or Swarm from our Layer 2 examples that are building and providing the interfaces for issuers to use. And that, of course, leaves us with layer 4 of the security token stack, the famous liquidity layer. Now, Kyle, you're obviously very familiar with all the liquidity solutions out there. Why don't you walk our listeners through this one?
Layer 4 is my favorite part, so I'd be happy to. I think that the key here is that liquidity is considered the biggest feature since it allows these assets to trade in the same capacity as cryptocurrencies and traditional stocks do today. When it comes to liquidity, this layer is created in 3 distinct ways. The first is the issuer-managed liquidity. This is done through buyback programs, market makers, and issuer-facilitated transactions, all of which are directly offered by the issuer themselves straight to their token holders and investors. Issuance platform Realty has experimented with this option in complement to outside liquidity providers. And so this is essentially where the issuer can manage that liquidity on their own for their users. The second type is a peer-to-peer liquidity, which is created by decentralized exchanges that power investors to actually trade with each other directly. This typically requires a whitelist and compliance tools in addition to a liquidity pool solution, and that allows for investors to trade on that peer-to-peer marketplace. We've seen the Uniswap exchange, which hosts many of the live security tokens to date, leverage this model very successfully, where they have essentially the tech platform that allows for these investors to link together, but don't necessarily have the regulatory components that are expected of a traditional exchange. In this third component, where we're talking about actual exchanges, we're talking about secondary market liquidity through regulated marketplaces and exchanges that use order books and other methods to match buyers and sellers to facilitate trading. This solution is one most commonly known in traditional markets, as exchanges like the New York Stock Exchange or NASDAQ use their regulatory licenses to improve the exchange of assets between investors. This also encompasses platforms like T0 and Open Finance, but they are a regulatory level below, if you will, these national exchanges and function as certified alternative trading systems. These platforms are also key to the market because they are, many would argue, are much more scalable than a traditional peer-to-peer model because they can operate an order book, which essentially allows buyers and sellers to place bids at a specific rate and then be able to fill them as they find somebody on the other side of that trade. It allows for a more automated process and allows volumes to expand exponentially instead of having to find an exact one-to-one trade between 2 different buyers and sellers. So between these 3 options, security tokens can and have found some kind of liquidity on secondary markets, Herwig.
Well said, Kyle. That it almost sounds like there could even be a liquidity stack that could go through, but ultimately that completes our security token stack. And of course, all the layers do stem from each other. The type of blockchain an STO is powered on and the smart contracts that they are written on could determine which liquidity solutions are available. And certain platforms only support Ethereum-based security tokens, or even more specifically, perhaps those programmed on a specific protocol, like the DS protocol or even T-Rex protocol by Tokeny, for example, in Europe. So
hopefully this is helpful for our listeners when it comes to evaluating an STO as well. I mean, you should immediately determine the key facts. Which blockchain is it built on? What security token contract protocol is it using? Which tokenization platform issued it? And finally, what the liquidity options for that asset might be. Just as an example, the Fullerton Ave real estate token is on Ethereum. It uses ERC20 standards with custom smart contracts. It's issued by Realty and trades on a peer-to-peer market using Uniswap. So these 4 questions are going to be key for evaluating that tech stack. This means that I will manage my investment using the Realty website, or if I choose to self-custody, I can still trade my tokens on the Uniswap platform. For another example, in the case of blockchain capital, it's on the Ethereum blockchain. coded using the DS protocol standard developed by Securitize, which has a partnership with OFN, a secondary market, as well as the peer-to-peer market, leveraging Securitize's instant access tool, which also leverages AirSwap as the back-end decentralized exchange. As we anticipate thousands of security tokens in the future, using the security token stack will be helpful in quickly getting a technical understanding of an STO, which Herwig expertly described throughout this main topic. Or maybe as an issuer, this helps you understand exactly what each layer's functionality does, because it will be crucial for you to understand these specific pieces as you work with different providers who will use all kinds of jargon and all kinds of fancy words to describe all of their functionality. And with that, I think that's all we got for you today on the show. As always, please feel free to reach out to Herwig or myself directly with any questions or feedback. We're very active on Twitter as well as LinkedIn and love having conversations, whether that's discussions, debates, or even just giving us some interesting feedback or any articles you think we missed, overlooked, or any breaking news that you have found yourself. And if you like the show, please be sure to share it with someone or anyone that you think that would like it as well. We like to try to call this the Insiders Podcast in the industry because we're covering all of the biggest events and all of the institutional plays in the industry. So if you want to stay up to date and don't want to do the research yourself, this is the spot to be. In the meantime, be safe, and we'll catch you in next week's episode next Tuesday.
Thanks for listening.